Hi there, welcome back. While interrogating Sheila Burling, the inspector takes a very different approach than he's taken to either Mr. Burling or Sybil, because he sees that there might be a chance that Sheila would understand her guilt and change. Now, that is an empathy that the other two lack. Let's watch as to how he interrogates Sheila.
Sheila Burling was different from her father. There was a fragility about her, a sensitivity that made her more vulnerable to the truth I was there to reveal. She had been brought up in the same privileged world, but she wasn't hardened by it. Not yet. As I turned my attention to her, I could sense her growing unease, the realization dawning that she, too, was entangled in this tragedy. I began by describing Eva Smith, a young woman full of potential, working hard to make something of herself. I saw the flicker of recognition in Sheila's eyes as I spoke. She was beginning to understand where this was leading. She wasn't like her father, who could dismiss a life so easily. She felt things more deeply, and that would make this all the more painful for her. I brought up the incident at Millward's, the dress shop where Sheila had crossed paths with Eva. Sheila tried to hide her discomfort, but I could see the truth written all over her face. She had acted out of jealousy, out of a petty sense of power. Eva had looked better in a dress than Sheila did, and that had been enough to set her off. When I revealed that Eva had been dismissed from her job because of Sheila's complaint, I watched as the color drained from her face. She had known, of course, that she'd complained, but she hadn't fully understood the consequences. Not until now. She tried to explain herself, stumbling over her words as she described how she had been in a bad mood that day, how she hadn't really meant to get Eva fired. But those explanations didn't matter. The fact was that her actions had destroyed another woman's livelihood, had pushed Eva further down a path that would eventually lead to her death. Sheila was quick to admit her guilt, quicker than I expected. Unlike her father, she didn't try to justify what she'd done. She could see the cruelty in her actions, the selfishness. She wasn't trying to protect herself. She was grappling with the weight of what she'd done. And that was the first step toward understanding. But this wasn't just about making Sheila feel guilty. It was about making her see that her actions, however small they seemed at the time, had real consequences. That she couldn't simply wash her hands of this because she hadn't meant any harm. I needed her to understand that people like Eva Smith didn't have the luxury of dismissing these kinds of incidents as trivial. For them, every slight, every injustice could be catastrophic. Sheila's reaction was telling. She wasn't defensive like her father, nor was she indifferent like her mother would later prove to be. She was shaken, genuinely remorseful. But remorse alone wasn't enough. It was a starting point, but there was more to be done. As I continued, I saw her beginning to connect the dots, to realize that this wasn't just about her or her actions alone. It was about the world she lived in, the power she had, and how easily that power could ruin someone's life. She was beginning to understand that her privilege came with responsibility, a responsibility she had failed to recognize until it was too late. When I finally paused, Sheila looked at me with a mix of horror and shame. But there was something else there too, a determination to do better, to make amends if that were even possible. I couldn't tell her what to do next. That was for her to decide. But I knew that Sheila was not beyond redemption. She had seen the truth, and now it was up to her what she would do with it. The interrogation had left her shaken, but also aware. And that was what I needed, for her to see that the world wasn't as simple as she'd been led to believe, that her actions had consequences far beyond her own experience. Sheila Burling had learned something that night, and while it wouldn't undo the harm she'd caused, it was a step toward understanding the weight of her actions.